But I just worked in IT, and working with computers, you hear about crypto and stuff like that, and got into it in like 2016 ish. Lost a ton of money. Went back in, lost a ton of money. Found Richard Hart, stopped losing money. Um,
Right.
once you like listen to what he says, a lot of the stuff he says makes sense, and you're like, oh, wow, I was doing some very stupid stuff. But yeah, watched him, followed him, and then saw his Hex project, and was like, yeah, I'll give this thing a try, and been in since day one.
Because to understand Hedron, you have to understand Hex.
So yeah, just my first question would be, what is Hedron all about?
It's Hedron's is a contract. That spins up another contract actually, which allows you to wrap hex stakes. But for people who just have native hex stakes, like the current hex stakes made through the hex contract, it monetizes their shares. And it does that by days served multiplied by B shares. And during this launch phase, there's all sorts of other there's a launch bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can look at this kind of like the initial distribution of this token as being given to hex stakers. And if you think about it, hex stakers are a very particular subset of people, of the population.
Mm-hmm.
And they have certain qualities.
Yeah, because also when you look at total holders and then total stakers, there is a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, go on.
And well, that's an interesting. Well, what do you guys think would be the attributes of a hex staker as opposed to the rest of the crypto population?
A long-term thinker,
A
right?
yield-seeking long-term thinker.
Okay, so this Hedron has been given to those people. So in a way, it makes hex, like especially the OG hex stakers, it makes us, or makes them whales. And all of a sudden, it changes how you play the game a little bit, because all of a sudden they're giving all this kind of economic energy, right? And then how they play that game, like at first it's just a very simple kind of thing, like okay, you can get Hedron by minting it from days staked multiplied by how many B shares you have, or B share is a T share is 1,000 B shares.
Mm-hmm.
And then it very quickly turns into, well, you can also make a stake through the Hedron contract, in which case you can wrap it and you can turn it into an NFT. So for a lot of those, it's worthwhile doing the maximum length of time, Quattro Cinco, because then you're getting the maximum amount of yield. And you can just wait and see where the market goes. And if you want to sell it in 5 years or 10 years, you could potentially do that. And so at the same time as well, you can be harvesting the Hedron from it as you go.
And what all of that means, we will cover in a second. But I think since Hedron is so new, it just started, right? The 10x multiplier bonus is still active right now. So why don't we give the people a little bit of what Hedron is, for just the basics, and then talk about what is going on right now. And then, of course, we need to go to hedron.pro. Right, you want to do that? Like, let's just a
well, yeah. If you've got hex native stakes right now, the only choice you have really is to either claim or mint. And claiming just attaches the bonus, so that you can then later decide when to mint. Because claiming attaches the bonus for the whole length of the stake. Like every time you go back to mint, you'll get that bonus, and you mint based on how many days you've served, minus how many days you've already minted, right?
Yeah, and Ellen, I know what your goal is here, but I'm sorry, but you won't get a 1 minute elevator pitch.
No, it's too hard for crypto, I guess.
Even I needed at least 15 minutes, in order to get around this. I know your goal is to cut maybe out a little clip here of a 1 minute elevator pitch.
We need something
you won't
easy
get that.
for the people.
You know what?
So
well,
new.
I mean, there's many elements to it, but in a way, it monetizes shares.
All right, and maybe we can get into the topic that is also really present right now in the community. So Hex has the idea of delayed gratification, but in Hedron you do not have to delay the gratification because you can mint Hedron pretty much every single day, right? So every single day when you have served.
Yeah, but when you decide to sell it or not sell it as well.
Well, of course, this is always on you. So what do you guys think about this controversy? Does Hedron destroy the game theory of Hex?
No.
No, for me it adds to it. It adds value, and so it adds to the depth of what you could do. And it's like, it adds so much to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
also for me, it gives the market more opportunities, and it encourages people more towards long-term thinking, more towards long-term staking. Even if they have the option in the future to get rid of the stakes, to sell the stake, but it's still just another option, and it might just give the people enough confidence to do it. And it's it is not our problem if the staker decides to get rid of his juicy 15-year stake in 7 years or in 10 years or in 12 years. And my best guess here is that the 15-year staker who made the stake over the Hedron smart contract will just find out over the served time that he wants to keep this hex stake in there, because he can even mint Hedron like once a year on that, and has this as excess liquidity until the time runs out for the actual hex stake. And if there is really something extremely happening, in their own staker's life, then yes, there is as well the option of creating some new liquidity by selling this stake to somebody else. And there is also it also does not destroy the price chart of hex, because in order to get rid of my Hedron hex stake, I would still need a buyer on the other side, and this buyer would need to buy it with what?
well, you can buy with anything. I mean, if it's an NFT which has just been put on sale on a market,
Yeah.
then they can buy it with. It depends what the market takes, but like,
Yeah, then it's even less price destroyable, because
Yeah.
the buyer buys with, for example, ETH or USDC, with a stable coin, and then the seller gets a stable coin and can just dump the stable coin, and it does not affect the hex price chart.
or what they'll probably do is maybe they'll go buy their Lambo, but they'll reinvest or their house or whatever, but then they'll reinvest some of it, and where are they going to reinvest it? In hex.
Yeah, in the
and
system
and
which
whatever
worked
got
for them.
sold is still locked up for that whole long period of time.
Well, so if you look at Hex, right? Hex is heavily gate kept, first of all. It's not listed on any centralized exchanges. I don't think it's ever going to be listed on a centralized exchange, and I think it's largely to do with its liquidity. Its liquidity is low all the time, and exchanges make money on fees. It's just not a good value proposition for an exchange to list Hex. They probably will lose money doing it. So unless something drastically changes, I don't think we're ever going to see Hex on a centralized exchange. And additionally, you have a lot of people who have become multi-millionaires through Hex. It's performed very well for a lot of people. So you have two, I won't say they're necessarily problems with Hex, they're just really problems with the environment. And that is, one, if you become a multimillionaire, right? What is the strategy you see in the fiat world that people like to adopt to be able to actually use that liquidity somewhere? Well, they typically will lock it up, and they will typically find a way to borrow against it at a lower rate than whatever it's appreciating at. So they're still net positive all the time, but now they have some liquidity that they can use in the real world. So Hedron exists to solve that part of the market. It also exists to bring Hex to other users that it otherwise can't reach currently. One of those is the NFT marketplace. So one thing Hedron allows you to do is you can actually encapsulate a Hex stake into an NFT token and throw that on OpenSea, Wearable, wherever you want, and you're actually trading the real Hex stake. That token's directly redeemable for the stake. So now you have these high value NFT tokens that you can take to these marketplaces, and 20% of all Ethereum traffic is on OpenSea. So there's a lot of people there. And if you're going to market to someone, what's the hardest part about marketing Hex to people? Well, MetaMask is hard to install. They don't know anything about DeFi or Uniswap or all this stuff. Trying to go through that process with someone who has no idea what you're talking about, difficult. But everyone on OpenSea, they already have MetaMask. They already have Ethereum. They already have USDC. You can put Hex stakes right in front of them. And, what do you do on OpenSea? You look at, what NFTs are trading for the most money.
Right.
And so, if you have Hex stakes leading that, and 20% of all Ethereum users are there, and they're already primed to buy. Like it's a great marketing system.
So was this mainly the purpose was to obviously to hack a newer audience that could possibly get into Hex, but because of the obstacles in the way in terms of education, how to onboard new people and all that, there's a new kind of shortcut to access the NFT marketplace so you can bring on people to Hedron, to Hex and Hedron. And I guess that's from the marketing side of things. So but there's also a utility aspect of things as well. Maybe if you can touch upon that a bit. Is Hedron mainly, let's say, for example, aimed towards new user adoption, or is it more like it has an actual use case for the Hexican community or Hex holders in general, or whatever the case might be?
Well, I think it has both. Again, that's kind of the interesting dynamic. So if you want to like just the TLDR on the features, if you're an existing Hexican and you already have stakes, Hedron will let you just mint Hedron tokens for free. If you have, it's based upon how many B shares your stakes have and how many days you've served within them. But you can just have access to free Hedron tokens for holding your stakes and actually serving time within them. And that's an incentive to get people to, one, emergency and stake a little bit less, be a little bit less stupid, which helps the hex price. We have less sell pressure. Additionally, it's using that model as like a liquidity seed, right? Because on the other side of this coin, you're going to have a pseudo lending system. I like to call it an advance, because you have a certain amount of Hedron you're allowed to mint against the hex stake. It's determined on its stats, and you actually have to serve the stake to completion to get all of it. Every day it accumulates a little bit more free Hedron tokens. The advance system, which is kind of like the borrowing side, will give it all to you up front on the condition that you pay it back over time with a small fee. And everything you pay back, including the fees, is burnt. So your role in the system is to deflate the system and pump everyone else's bags. So these two systems are kind of like directly opposed at each other. And the interesting dynamic that happens here is you seed all this liquidity out, and you have this borrowing system that has major tax advantages for people who have made significant money in Hex. And you have this interesting duality where you're minting on one side, but the borrowers want to buy your tokens because they need to be able to make their repayments and all that kind of stuff. And then you combine that with the encapsulated stake side, where you throw these things on NFT marketplaces, and there's some restrictions there, right? Like you can't go take a loan out and then go send your loaned stake to a marketplace and sell it, right? It's like you're going to be a little restricted in what you can do. But being able to put these on marketplaces and speculate on the future price performance of stakes brings a whole new dynamic to Hex exposure. It brings a whole new dynamic to how we can interact with Hex as a protocol.
I see.
Hedron is more like that streetwalker with the high heels, bending over, looking in your car, say, "Hey, what's up, baby? Don't you want some of this cheap Hedron?" I do. I like some of that cheap Hedron. Today I did a couple HSI stakes, taking some Hex and staking them in the Hedron ecosystem. Breezy. And it was very simple. It was just like staking on Hex. I put one out really long time, another one at a medium interval, and a shorter one. It's so crazy because you get to mint Hedron on your stakes. So every single one of you who has Hex stakes and you haven't at least claimed your Hedron yet, are you nuts? Yeah, I know there was some drama about someone claiming some bullshit. And, and I'm not holding anything against that person. But bullshit is bullshit, You call it is what it is. So either go out there and claim your Hex and wait till the end of your stakes to mint your Hedron, or just mint your Hedron and have them in your wallet. Then when you get close to the end of the stake, you mint some more. Either way, you're golden.